You're right there, Jim, an even bigger pain in the neck for Rubens Barrichello. Rubens, my heart went out to you when I saw that engine go.
Yeah, no, mine too. It was a pity because, you know, a great start, a great 24 laps where I think Mika had a problem, but I was leading. I was just back to the Formula 3 times. I have a competitive car. There was no mistake. It was just, you know, I was actually faster than Michael at that time. He was on one stop. So we still have to play catch up a little bit to get faster than the Ferrari and the McLarens, but we're playing with the big ones. We're really doing. So it was just a pity to see that the engine was down.
The engine wasn't your only problem, I understand. You had trouble with your helmet as well?
Well, it was one part of the helmet that came a little bit unloose, so I had a lot of buffeting on the straight. So I was asking the team if they could take the extension of my helmet away on the pit stop, but unfortunately I never got the chance to do that because the engine failed before.
Were you aware of the crowd reaction as you were going around the track?
Well, but, I mean, it's almost 70,000 people, so you could see a little bit. You could see, I mean, you could not check because it was the concentration might have gone away, but it's you could just spare a little time with them. It was great.
You've ended up with no points, but still so many positive things to take away with you with this weekend. Is that right? Well,
I said at the beginning of the season that whenever you're knocking on the door, it has to happen. So for 2 races now, we're knocking to be on the podium, and we led the race. So it might happen soon.
We look forward to Imola. Thanks, Rubens.
Well, he knows that feeling. I think that's once out of 7 that he's managed to finish his home Grand Prix, but better luck next time, Rubinho. Okay, we will be back with more interviews and more analysis from Sao Paulo. Rejoin us in a couple of minutes. And welcome back to Sao Paulo. So Mika Häkkinen is the big winner of the Brazilian Grand Prix, followed by Michael Schumacher and Heinz Harald Frentzen. Let's drop into the press conference now and find out what the big 3 have got to say for themselves after the race.
Mika, many congratulations on winning the Brazilian Grand Prix, but on the 3rd lap there seemed to be some drama. David rejoined the race, you seemed to have a problem, Rubens and Michael went past. What happened?
I thought that time the race gonna be over for me, you know. I was coming round the 3rd corner and selecting up the gears normally and going flat out. Everything looked cool. The gap was getting bigger for Rubens that time. And selected other higher gear, and suddenly no gear whatsoever. So I had a gearbox problem. Obviously I thought the game is over. And the team obviously told me to continue, and suddenly gears came back, and I was able to continue. But that time already obviously I lost places.
Up until the first stop, you followed Michael, but when he went in, you had a couple of laps. You went very, very quickly, and again when you came out again, you pushed hard. How much did you have in reserve during the race?
Let's say this way: I could have gone much quicker in those couple of laps, but I had traffic, I mean, all the time, and it was really unfortunate. I mean, I was really going for it. I was really enjoying driving, and I'm flat out, but I mean, I got a lot of traffic and I lost a lot of time. And probably I could have gone 1 second quicker, but I think I just went half a second quicker just because of traffic. Otherwise, there is always a little bit reserved during a race.
Mika, thank you. Michael, are you happy or disappointed to be second?
I could have been worse. I could have been 3rd or 4th. And no, to be honest, already in the warm-up we seemed to be more competitive, and we proved that in the race. Made a huge step forward. It was obvious that Mika was faster when he was behind me, but obviously overtaking in Formula 1 is very difficult, and he never got a chance. We planned the pit stop to our knowledge in the best way to keep him behind us, but he was able to put in some fast laps and join the circuit in front of me, so nothing we could do on that. Afterwards I just kept pushing, kept him under pressure as much as I could do. Obviously he wasn't really flat out, but still you want to keep up the pressure and see what happens, and that's what I did up to the end. With the gap I can live personally, because I know what to expect for further races in the car development. And the second we had in qualifying was unacceptable, but the gap we're having now, that's all right. I mean, we can live with this, and I'm pretty sure the season is long. We can deal with this, and we're going to see some more close fighting in the future, I guess.
As you say, you really improved the car overnight. What did you do to it?
Yeah, you would like to know that, I guess, yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Heinz Harald, 2 races for Jordan, 2 podiums, equal second in the championship, but drama at the end of the race. What happened?
You mean the last lap? Well, I don't know. I all of a sudden lost fuel pressure. I was really surprised when the engine stopping, and the team didn't tell me, obviously, that I was short on fuel. I don't know. It's really the problem that we had no fuel at the end. I know only that I saw the fuel pressure sign coming up, and by this time I was pushing like hell. I didn't want to get lapped by Mika. Also, I had a very strong mid-race situation that I was very long out and tried to fight my places back on old tires. I had quite a lot of big offs, but fortunately I stopped at the right moment and enough for finish third.
Did you actually know you were third? Because you seemed very disappointed on the cameras.
Well, I didn't know really. I was. My first impression was that probably I'm not third anymore, but of course, I think nobody was behind me and Mika that could have passed me. So then I got the message that I'm still third. So I'm very happy for my team. They did a good job, a very reliable car, and I feel great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Heinz Harald. Sorry about the slight technical problems with that press conference. It's always nice, though, to hear what the drivers have got to say. And in a couple of minutes, we'll talk to Tony Jardine about the big moments that we've seen this afternoon here at Interlagos at the Brazilian Grand Prix. With us. It's a beautiful evening here at Interlagos, and a pretty good evening for Mika Häkkinen and McLaren as well. Tony, have they answered the questions about their reliability here?
Not quite. I think they're very lucky actually, but what they have done is produce this fabulous revolutionary car, this very light car, but I think all the components are so compressed together, the heat, the vibration, keep giving them problems with hydraulics and with the gearbox, which has manifested itself again today. You heard Häkkinen in the press conference saying, I lost everything. And very luckily somehow it came back. Who knows how?
Well, ironic, wasn't it, that David Coulthard was telling us before the start of the race he'd never felt so confident at Interlagos, and I think he went about 6 inches, didn't he?
Yeah, but this is one of the most dangerous places. Just look at the field streaming around there. You're seeing the world's best drivers, the Grand Prix drivers, somehow reacting and somehow getting past the stationary David Coulthard there. Great deal of bad luck for him, but you have to remember the guys that started from the back behind Coulthard's McLaren, they're coming past there at 150, 160 miles an hour, and through the smoke suddenly they're seeing the back end of a car and jinking across. So everyone did a fabulous job, and so did Charlie Whiting, letting the race go on there from the race director. Good decision.
Yeah, absolutely. When we came to the circuit early this morning, we saw this massive, great, was a couple of mile queue, wasn't it? They're all come to see Rubens Barrichello, and for a long while it looks as though this could be his day, especially when Häkkinen lost that power.
Yeah, but again, this was another very dangerous situation because Rubens Barrichello got up into second place there, and if you look, when Häkkinen is suddenly fumbling for the gears and slows down in front as Coulthard's coming out, and Barrichello had to come right out of the slipstream as suddenly the McLaren slowed down in front of him as he was fumbling for gears, and out of the pits was coming Coulthard on lap 4. Another potentially dangerous situation averted there by the reactions of Rubens Barrichello.
The big two, Häkkinen and Michael Schumacher, had a real scrap, didn't they? And Mika Häkkinen just didn't have the grunt to get past Michael Schumacher.
No, he didn't. But you see, Häkkinen also, we've got to remember on this that he was nursing his hydraulics, I believe. I think that he was watching the temperatures very carefully. I think he was talking to the pits a lot of the time, just trying to make sure that this gremlin didn't come back again. The last thing he was concentrating was going at 110%, because the bumps at Interlagos are giving this McLaren really hard time. And when he did he seemed like he was on an elastic band, didn't he? He'd get very close, then he'd pull away again, and perhaps the problems were intermittent and they were coming back.
dreadfully difficult, of course, to overtake, as always, and there's an absolutely crucial pit stop. I mean, did this one decide the race from your point of view?
Yes, it did. No question about this at all. And we were watching the lap times very carefully, and we've heard Häkkinen now talk about the traffic that he was encountering. But he stayed out there for those 3 to 4 laps long. You see the fuel flap come up there. Ferrari had been in for their stop, Michael Schumacher, but it had been over 10 seconds. You look now as they get this McLaren out, absolutely fabulous performance, 9.1. 9.1, that was a fabulous stop. When he comes down to the end of this elongated and prolonged pit lane here, and he's having to keep the speed right the way down, we were thinking, and certainly Ferrari were hoping, that he was coming through turn 1, but he wasn't, only just in turn 1 now. So Häkkinen had gone much faster than he thought through the traffic. The McLaren boys had done an absolutely brilliant job, and there he is, there's Michael Schumacher just coming to view, and he must have thought, oh, there it is, oh dear, I haven't made it, I'm second.
You've been very much part of a pit team like that McLaren team there. What about the tension on a stop like that?
Well, it's horrendous, and I mean, one of my jobs, I had to be the actual jack man who had the hydraulic jack and had to look around for everybody until they'd finished the job. And I have made a mistake, you know, I caused it at Monte Carlo. I caused Niki Lauda to nearly jump out of the car and nut me with his helmet still on, but it also made him angry. And afterwards, the boys give you a very, very hard time. But these guys are rehearsing morning, day and night. You saw them all this morning out early in the pit lane, still doing all the drill. We watched the Ferraris boys doing it with Ross Brawn the other morning. They practice, they practice, they practice, and that is a fine art, I'll tell you.
Okay, Tony, thank you very much for the moment. Let's have a word with the man who designs the McLaren, the technical director, Adrian Newey, the man who's really responsible for the McLarens going the way they are, and Adrian's talking now with James.
Adrian, fantastic performance. You got the win. The car was reliable.
Yeah, well, it wasn't reliable. I mean, David had a problem, obviously. It was a bit tense on the pit wall, but no, Mika did a great job. He had a glitch earlier in the race, which meant that he dropped down to third. Then he did a great job of charging back and getting past Michael in the pit stop.
The performances all seemed to go and come back, and the pace seemed to. What was Mika's problem initially, and was that a recurrent problem?
No, it wasn't a recurrent problem. We had a gear change problem, which meant that he lost a few seconds. That dropped him down to third, but then after that we were okay.
Where do you go from here, Adrian? Keep on winning?
Well, that'd be nice, but who knows? No guarantees.
Well done.
Thank you.
Where do you stand on him? Who was it? Heinz-Harald Frentzen said we should send him to a desert island and everyone would close up then. He's too good, this guy.
He is good. He's absolutely brilliant. That's what I say. I mean, what do you do? You've had the best car in 1998. He's had to sit down with his piece of paper and with his computers and everything. Well, how can I better that? And he has. He's made it slimmer, lighter. You know, what they do now is they move the ballast around because the car is actually underweight to make it up to the correct weight. So he can move that according to the circuit wherever they need the weight.
We've seen Tony Heinz-Harald Frentzen, obviously exhausted but very happy. But now let's look at one or two of the drivers that didn't make it to the finish. And Damon Hill, Frentzen's Jordan teammate.
Yeah, I mean, he must be really irked by now because this is the second race of 1999 where Heinz-Harald Frenzen's gone in. Well, Damon had an altercation with Wirtz. He reckoned he got past Wirtz and that it was his corner, but the steering was damaged. You do not drive around Interlagos with damaged steering because the bumps here, we've seen what happened to other drivers like Stefan Sarrazin. We saw what happened to Panis here last year. You can slam into the barriers like Ricardo Zonta did. They believe there's a possibility his suspension broke on Ricardo Zonta's car and sent him spearing off into the barriers, and he's in hospital.
David Coulthard left at the start, gave it a charge, but there was almost a sense of inevitability that this, again, wasn't going to be DC's day.
Yeah, we'll find out in a little while what's happened, but I believe the Achilles heel of this car, you know, is the hydraulics, is the gearbox section, the transmission, because you look when David came back in here, he'd lost the power, he got back out, he did another lap and a half, and then it finally stopped again. Now, everything is driven by the hydraulics, so if it's a hydraulic problems, that is the cause there for David Coulthard. We'll find out.
Yeah, I'm hearing that they told Coulthard to stay with that McLaren, to give the old photographers the elbow, because they don't like the snappers getting in there and having a peek round it, do they?
Well, this time last year, if you remember, the photographers did find an extra brake pedal inside that car, and all was revealed later on.
Yeah.
And I remember, well, you and I watched the photographer when he was talking to Ron after his shot.
talking nice and quiet later on, wasn't he? You mentioned Sarrazin there. I mean, a real big spin in every sense of the word he had, the new man in the Minardi.
Now, this boy's a very, very fast driver. He's one of only 5 men who won first time out in Formula 3000. But look at the throttle jamming wide open and just spinning that Minardi on its axis as flames spew out from underneath. You can see the right front dummage on there as well. But look at how fast he's going in. Now, again, those tyres are positioned perfectly outside the barrier. Did you see the way it cushioned the blow and then caused the car just to spin on its axis? Very, very lucky man indeed, because he went in at the right angle. The tyres did their job, unlike the tyres that weren't in the place for Ricardo Zonta, because he went metal to metal and he actually head-butted the barrier with his helmet as well. But Sarrazin very lucky there. And
Ricardo Zonta, Imola might come a little bit too quickly for the British-American racing man, but he should be back in a couple of races. That's good news. He just got a damaged foot. Well, Rubens Barrichello, such a chirpy, friendly little character, and I don't know, I think deep down a lot of people wanted it to be his day today, but once again it just didn't go for him.
No, it didn't go right for him at all. He's prepared to be patient. If you think about all his time since '93, and we were talking about '93 earlier on in the race when he was running in the European Grand Prix in the wet behind Ayrton Senna. The guy is very, very talented, but there's been a huge weight on his shoulders to try and take over from Senna since Senna's death in '94. They love him here in Brazil, and it's great because it's really rekindled the sport here after the sad demise of Paul Senna.
Absolutely. I remember here last year that the Jordans had an absolutely miserable time, or at least Heinz-Harald Frentzen has scored for the Silverstone-based team in 1999. Let's have a word with team boss Eddie Jordan now. And of course, Damon Hill, a disappointment for him once again. And here he is talking to James.
Eddie Jordan, yet another podium. It looks like you might be able to pitch your tent right in front of Williams Benetton, taking up P3 in the championship. You're already P2.
It's a long way off. It's our target, and we came strong last year in the latter half of it. It's a dream come true for Frentzen, really. You know, 2 podiums in 2 races, coming to a new team, almost a stranger. But he's not a stranger to us. He drove for us in 1990 in Formula 3000. I'm particularly pleased for him. But the atmosphere in the team, and Damon has helped to strengthen that. We're going to be strong this year. I have a gut feeling. Not too much money on us just yet. We'll have to wait.
He wouldn't put his own money on it, that's for sure. And that's how things look after a couple of rounds. Eddie Irvine still the leader, and Hakkinen, Frentzen close by on 10 points. Ralf Schumacher scoring for Williams with 7, and Michael in the Ferrari and Fisichella. And after 2 rounds, Ferrari lead the constructors. McLaren and Jordan tied up on 10 points apiece. Now, just briefly, Tony, your thoughts on championship as we head for Europe?
Well, one of the things that Michael Schumacher said was that in race trim we will be much closer to the McLaren. In fact, it was about half a second, which his prediction was absolutely right. Now, if they can bring in all these other modifications before Imola, then they've got a good chance of being a little bit more equal with the McLarens. Then we're going to start to see the battle. Well, it wasn't so bad, so I don't think Ferrari can be too disappointed. They've got lots in the pipeline, and I think McLaren are close to the end of their development. They're looking for reliability. Ferrari are looking for speed.
Good. Tony, thank you very much indeed. Well, tonight, highlights and more reaction from us here at Interlagos at 11:20. So Mika Hakkinen back on top of the world in Brazil, but it was Rubens Barrichello who'd filled Interlagos on Grand Prix Sunday. He and the stewards can take plenty from this race.
A great start, a great 24 laps where I think Mika had a problem, but I was leading. I was just back to the Formula 3 times. I have a competitive car. There was no mistake. It was just, you know, I was actually faster than Michael at that time. He was on 1 stop. So we still have to play catch up a little bit to get faster than the Ferrari and the McLarens, but we're playing with the big ones. We're really doing.
Were you aware of the crowd reaction as you were going around the track?
Well, but, I mean, it's almost 70,000 people, so you could see a little bit. You could see, I mean, you could not check because it was the concentration might have gone away, but it's you could just spare a little time with them. It was great.
You've ended up with no points, but still so many positive things to take away with you with this weekend. Is that right?
Well, I said at the beginning of the season that whenever you're knocking on the door, it has to happen. So for 2 races now, we're knocking to be on the podium, and we led the race. So it might happen soon.
Your 10th career win, and one of the most satisfying. You've got your winning ways back again.
Yeah, it's really great. I mean, I I think we should get this already in Melbourne, to be honest, in the first Grand Prix, but the technical problems stopped us to do that, and I'm very grateful. I think the team, all the mechanics, engineers has done a fabulous work. They got the car finally reliable and strong, and it's great to finish the Grand Prix and particularly like this, winning the race, getting the fastest time in a qualifying. So everything went like a perfect way.
David, very bad luck today. Take us through it from the start.
Obviously, a bit surprised at the start when I saw the lights go out. I must have been in the hollow in the engine because it just stopped immediately. I didn't even move, a centimetre. So it was disappointing because I knew that Charlie wasn't going to do a safety car if any car stalled in the grid. So effectively that meant it was going to be very difficult to get any points. But anyway, we could use it for testing and went out again. And then we had a gearbox problem, so I had no gears.
It's very early days in the championship. No one's really got a big leap. Presumably you're reasonably relaxed at this point.
No, I'm incredibly disappointed. It's 2 races and no points. Championships can be won by getting a good start to a season, and to come away to the first 2 races with nothing on the board is very disappointing. This time last year I had 12 points.
It was always very close throughout the race. What was it like in the cockpit? What were you thinking?
I was hoping we managed after the pit stop the first position, but obviously he was able to put in some fast laps and came out in front of me. But we didn't do anything wrong. I guess he could have stayed out longer anyway and would have done it later then. So we tried to use it to the maximum, and as usual I believe we achieved the maximum with our performance and a package, and so we should be happy. On the other side, nothing has happened yet. He has 10 points, I have 6 points. We go to Imola, we go to an open situation still, so there is no clear decision in one direction, and therefore we can be a bit more relaxed compared to Saturday.
It's a dream come true for Frentzen, really. 2 podiums in 2 races, coming to a new team, almost a stranger. But he's not a stranger to us. He drove for us in 1990 in Formula 3000. I'm particularly pleased for him.
So 2 down, 14 to go. Ulsterman Eddie Irvine still top of the charts. Mika Häkkinen and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, though, putting the squeeze on. And it's Ferrari who lead the Constructors' Championship as we head for Imola. McLaren and Jordan neck and neck right behind them. Okay, then let's join Martin Brundle now, shall we? Martin with a considered view of the success stories in Brazil.
Well, here we are outside the victorious McLaren pit. This is the back end of it, not a view you'll often see. Just down there, a similar throng outside of the Ferrari team. And of course it's all the post-mortems of the race, what went on, all the excuses, and quite a lot of champagne flowing around here. A great team performance for McLaren, a long first stint. They got Häkkinen into the front of the race, gave him some clean air, and I think really that made it for them. And Schumacher, though, put on a pretty good fight. I think the Ferrari team are going to go home much happier than I expected. Both cars in the points, but significantly Michael Schumacher just 5-6 seconds behind at the end of the race, and I think their pace is better than they ever did imagined. But Irvine unfortunately got pulled in for apparently he needed to top up the air bottle. Another certain podium gone for him. Frentzen absolutely flying and putting Damon Hill under pressure, tripped over Wirtz. I believe it was Wirtz's problem, as does Damon Hill. I believe it was Wirtz's fault. But Ralf Schumacher, solid driving forward in a car that didn't have any pace, putting even more pressure on Alex Zanardi, his new teammate, who's having a dismal start to the year. Jean Alesi flying in the early part of the race, didn't get any points for it. My star of the day, definitely Rubens Barrichello, led the race. Okay, he had a slightly unfair advantage. He was on a 2-stop strategy, had a lighter car therefore, but he kept it ahead. It was super smooth drive and shows he's ready to win Grand Prix.
And this is how they finished. First Häkkinen, then Michael Schumacher, Frentzen on the podium again. Ralf Schumacher saving the day for Williams. Irvine hampered by that late stop. Panis getting Prost off the mark. Wirtz 7th, 2 laps adrift. Takagi and Genet the only other finishers. De La Rosa's hydraulics went. Villeneuve's BAR had the same problems. Zanardi had gearbox failure. Diniz spun. Barrichello's engine blew. Fisichella went with a damaged clutch. Sarrazin had that big crash. Alesi had gearbox failure, so did Coulthard. Trulli went the same way. Hydraulics on the Stewart stopped Herbert. And Hill's suspension went after that incident with Wirtz. Right then, a great day for Mika Häkkinen, but Tony Jardine right from the start. We knew it wasn't going to be David Coulthard's day, despite the fact that Scott fancied the job here, didn't he?
He did, and poor David Coulthard stalled on the uphill start on the line, and he got swarmed across there by the rest of the field. Now, it was very nearly a major accident, especially the guys coming from the back of the grid. How they all got round David Coulthard, I have no idea. But you can imagine the speed that they were coming up there as the waves parted through the tyre smoke. There was David Coulthard stranded in that McLaren. He managed to get it going somehow and putted around at the back of the field.
Well, we were saying all weekend, is the McLaren reliable? David Coulthard's let him down, and at one stage we thought Mika Häkkinen was going to go the same way.
Yeah, and we found out it's since hydraulics, and you see here Häkkinen well into the lead at the front of the Brazilian Grand Prix, behind him Rubens Barrichello. But suddenly, as David Coulthard rejoins the race on lap 4, Häkkinen loses all the gears. And he's fumbling for gears there. The hydraulics are failing on him. Somehow he got back into third place and got them going again, but where they came back from, who knows?
I'll have a word about Rubens Barrichello. Tough day for him.
Yeah, terribly tough day for him, but he's proved that the car is quick. He's proved that he's back on it, that he's turned the corner. You know, he's taken that huge weight of Ayrton Senna off his shoulders as well in front of the Brazilian crowd.
As so often happens, pit stops absolutely crucial at the Grand Prix, and there was one that the McLaren did Häkkinen proud.
Well, we'd had this fabulous battle between Michael Schumacher in the lead and Mika Häkkinen couldn't get past him. And Häkkinen had stayed out longest, the latest of the one pit stoppers, and he'd come in for that stop in 9.1, which was faster than Ferrari. But he'd had a lot of traffic in those 3 or 4 laps, including encountering Eddie Irvine coming out of the pits. Had he got ahead, we thought perhaps that the Ferrari would come into view earlier than this. There's Mika Häkkinen just coming us past the speed limit and ahead of Michael Schumacher's Ferrari. That crucial pit stop. Great work by McLaren, great work by Häkkinen to give him the lead again of the Brazilian Grand Prix.
We've seen a couple of pretty frightening smashes here this weekend. Zonta yesterday and Sarrazin, the new boy, and he was a big spinner in more ways than one.
Yeah, the Grand Prix rookie, the 24-year-old, he was coming up the hill. Now, we think he might have been thrown off by the bump. Now, look at that. The throttle sticks wide open and the car just spins round on its axis. 170, 180 miles per hour as flames spew out underneath there. Frontal damage. The wheel staying on with the new rules that it's tethered. And the Grand Prix rookie, very lucky indeed there, Jim.
Just briefly, shaping up really well as we head to Europe.
Oh, it's fantastic, isn't it? Especially we're now back to Europe. Ferrari have closed the gap. Michael said the car would be good in race form. It was only a half a second out, and they made a race of it. We're really pleased for Ferrari.
Absolutely. Football coming your way on Wednesday night. The FA Cup semi-final replay. Manchester United Arsenal highlights from 11:30. And when we go to Imola for the San Marino Grand Prix, the full F1 service qualifying on the Saturday, the race from 12:15. Win in Brazil, you're world champion. That's been the scenario for the last 5 years. Häkkinen with plenty to do to extend that sequence. Good night from us all.